The moment Eve Prentice stepped through the doors of the bustling auction house, his phone buzzed with his sister's name flashing on the screen. He ignored it, then it buzzed again. And again. On the fifth call, he finally relented, stepping into a quiet corner as bidding began on a rare Basquiat. "What is so urgent that you need to call me 5 times in a row, Olivia?" Eve hissed into the phone, watching a paddle raise for 8 million. "You need to leave, right now." His sister's voice was unnervingly calm. "I'm in the middle of an auction you don't care about. You're only there to avoid the blind date I set up for you, which started 15 minutes ago." Eve froze. He'd completely forgotten about Olivia's latest matchmaking attempt. "I'm not going. She's still waiting at Lumine. Her name is Zara Forrester. She's wearing a blue dress, and if you don't show up in the next 20 minutes, I'm donating $50 million from your foundation to that cat sanctuary you hate." "You wouldn't dare. Try me." The line went dead. Eve cursed under his breath. At 35, he'd built a shipping empire worth billions, negotiated with hardened business tycoons across 6 continents, but his 32-year-old sister still knew exactly how to corner him. The cat sanctuary donation was a direct hit not because he disliked cats, but because the sanctuary's owner had once tried to sue one of his companies over a ridiculous pollution claim. 23 minutes later, Eve stalked into Lumine, the upscale restaurant his sister had chosen. He scanned the room quickly, spotting a woman alone at a corner table, absent-mindedly stirring her drink while reading something on her phone. She wasn't what he expected. Olivia usually set him up with socialites or models, women who spent more time cultivating their social media presence than actual personalities. This woman was different. Her dark hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and her blue dress was elegant but understated. No excessive jewelry, no obvious designer labels screaming for attention. He approached her table. "Zara Forrester," she looked up, startled, then smiled. "You must be the infamous Eve Prentice. I was just about to pay for my drink and leave. I apologize for my tardiness." He sat down across from her, signaling a waiter. "My sister can be quite persistent, but I should have had the decency to arrive on time, or cancel," Zara added, raising an eyebrow. "That would have been fine too." Eve studied her. There was something refreshingly direct about her manner. "Fair enough. So tell me, what did my sister bribe you with to agree to this?" Zara laughed, a genuine sound that momentarily caught him off guard. "She's donating to my wildlife conservation program. I run field research on endangered species. Wildlife conservation." I would have expected, he stopped himself. "Let me guess, a model, socialite, trophy wife in training." Her green eyes held a challenging sparkle. "Something like that," he admitted. "Olivia usually has a type when it comes to her matchmaking endeavors." "Well, sorry to disappoint. I spend most of my time tracking migration patterns and fighting for habitat protection. Not much time for cocktail parties and Instagram poses." The waiter approached, and Eve ordered a scotch. "I'm not disappointed," he said after the waiter left. "Just surprised. That makes 2 of us." When Olivia described her billionaire shipping magnate brother, I pictured someone. She trailed off, measuring her words. "Older, fatter, with a monocle perhaps," Eve suggested, finding himself amused despite his initial reluctance. "Less approachable," she finished. Though the monocle would have been interesting, Eve found himself smiling. Their drinks arrived, and he lifted his glass. "To low expectations exceeded, then. I'll drink to that." As they ordered dinner, Eve discovered that Zara had a PhD in zoology, had lived on 4 continents tracking different endangered species, and was currently setting up a new research program focused on ocean conservation. "That actually intersects with my business," Eve noted as their main courses arrived. "My shipping company has been working on reducing our environmental impact." "Really?" Zara looked skeptical. "Most shipping companies I encounter are fighting environmental regulations tooth and nail." "Most shipping companies are short-sighted," Eve replied. "I've been investing heavily in developing more efficient engines, alternative fuels, and better waste management systems." "That's surprisingly progressive," Eve shrugged. "It's good business. Sustainable practices save money long-term, and customers increasingly demand them." but I'm also not interested in making billions by destroying the planet. The conversation flowed easily as they discovered shared interests in sustainable technology, international politics, and surprisingly, classic literature. By the time dessert arrived, a dark chocolate soufflé, they decided to share. Eve realized he'd been so engaged in their conversation that he hadn't checked his phone once, something that almost never happened. "You know," Zara said, scraping the last bit of chocolate from the dish, "this was actually not terrible." "High praise indeed," Eve laughed. "I was thinking the same thing." Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment something shifted in the air between them. "I should go," Zara said, suddenly breaking the moment. "Early start tomorrow." "Of course." Eve signaled for the check. "May I ask what you're working on?" "I'm meeting with potential donors for my new marine conservation initiative." It's an uphill battle convincing people to fund something they can't see and don't understand. Eve paid the bill despite her protests. As they walked out of the restaurant, the cool evening air enveloped them. He found himself reluctant to end the evening. "I could help," he said abruptly. "With your funding, I have connections." Zara stopped walking and turned to face him. "That's very kind, but I don't mix business with whatever this was." "A surprisingly pleasant evening," she smiled. "Yes, that." "Well, then allow me to propose a second surprisingly pleasant evening." "Dinner tomorrow," Zara hesitated, and Eve was struck by the unexpected desire for her to say yes. He rarely asked for second dates, especially with women his sister set him up with. "I have meetings until late," she said finally, "but I could do lunch on Thursday." "Thursday it is." He reached for his phone to exchange numbers, realizing he hadn't gotten hers yet. As they parted ways, Eve found himself watching her walk away, a strange feeling settling in his chest. His phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Well," he texted back, "I'm seeing her again on Thursday." "Don't get any ideas." Her response came immediately. "Too late, already planning the wedding." Eve rolled his eyes but couldn't completely suppress his smile. Thursday arrived with unexpected anticipation. Eve found himself checking the time repeatedly during his morning meetings, much to the surprise of his executive team who were used to his laser focus. They met at a small bistro near the harbor, where Zara arrived slightly breathless, her hair windblown from the sea breeze. "Sorry I'm late," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "My meeting with the Marine Protection Agency ran long." "Successful meeting?" Eve asked, genuinely interested. "Potentially. They're considering adding my research to their priority list, which would mean government backing." She looked excited, her green eyes bright with passion for her work. Their lunch extended well past the hour Eve had allocated, as Zara described her vision for creating protected marine corridors for migrating species. He found himself offering suggestions on dealing with international regulations, drawing on his experience navigating shipping laws across different countries. "You know," Zara said as they finished their coffee, "you're not at all what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more arrogant. Less thoughtful." "Olivia made you sound like this workaholic tyrant who terrorizes employees and never takes a day off." Eve winced. "She's not entirely wrong. I can be demanding, and I do work a lot. But there's more to you than that." Their eyes met, and Eve felt that strange pull again, stronger than before. "There's more to everyone than first impressions," he said quietly. Before they parted, Eve found himself asking to see her again. "Dinner Saturday." "I'm actually heading out on a research vessel this weekend," Zara replied. "We're tracking whale migration patterns off the coast." Disappointment hit him with surprising force. "When do you return?" "Tuesday morning, but I'll be exhausted and covered in sea salt," she laughed. "Tuesday evening then, I'll cook for you." Zara's eyebrows shot up. "You cook?" "Another hidden talent," he said with a slight smile. "My apartment at 7, she hesitated, then nodded. "Text me the address." As Eve watched her leave, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was a calendar invite from his assistant for a critical meeting with Japanese investors Tuesday evening at 6. He should reschedule his dinner with Zara. It would be the sensible thing to do. Instead, he forwarded the invite to his CFO with instructions to handle it. The weekend dragged interminably. Eve found himself checking marine weather reports for the area where Zara's research vessel would be operating, worrying when he saw predictions of rough seas on Sunday. He even tracked the vessel through his company's maritime monitoring system, watching its progress with an attention he usually reserved for his own cargo ships. On Tuesday morning, his phone chimed with a text from Zara. Back on dry land, still on for tonight. Relief washed over him, followed immediately by the realization that he needed to shop for ingredients. By 6:30, his penthouse kitchen was filled with the aroma of herbs and roasting chicken as he prepared a meal he hadn't cooked since culinary school, a brief detour in his youth before his father had pressured him into business school. At 7 sharp, his doorman called to announce Zara's arrival. When she stepped out of the elevator, Eve was struck by how naturally beautiful she looked. Her hair was still damp from a shower, her face free of makeup, dressed simply in jeans and a soft sweater. "Your building has better security than most government facilities," she commented, looking around his penthouse with curious eyes. "I had to show ID twice and get my photo taken." "Occupational hazard," Eve replied, leading her toward the kitchen. "When you ship valuable cargo around the world, you make enemies." Sounds dramatic. "Mostly tedious," he corrected, handing her a glass of wine, "but occasionally dramatic." Zara wandered to the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the city skyline. "This view must never get old." "Actually, I rarely notice it anymore," Eve admitted, joining her. "I spend most of my time looking at screens, not out windows." She turned to face him. "That seems like a waste." "It is," he agreed, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing. "How was your research trip?" Zara's face lit up as she described the pod of humpback whales they'd been tracking, the data they'd collected, and the storm they'd weathered on Sunday night. Eve guided her to the kitchen island, where he continued cooking while she talked, her hands animated as she described a particularly close encounter with a curious whale calf. "You really love your work," Eve observed, plating their dinner. "Don't you?" she asked. He considered the question as he carried their plates to the dining table. "I love aspects of it, the strategy, the problem-solving, but I don't have the same passion you do. For me, it's more about building something significant, proving something." "To whom?" "My father, initially. Now, I'm not sure anymore." They ate in comfortable conversation, Zara complimenting his cooking with genuine surprise, Eve sharing stories of his early shipping ventures. After dinner, they moved to his balcony with glasses of wine, the city lights spread out before them. "So how did you and Olivia end up so different?" Zara asked, leaning against the railing. "She's all sunshine and social causes, and you're a workaholic tyrant," he supplied with a wry smile. "I was going to say more reserved." Eve swirled his wine, considering. "Our mother died when I was 12, Olivia was 9. Our father was a complicated man, brilliant businessman, terrible parent. He focused all his attention on grooming me to take over his company and largely ignored Olivia. I think we both responded to that in different ways. I tried to meet his impossible standards, and Olivia decided to be his opposite in every way." "That explains a lot about both of you," Zara said softly. "What about you? How did you end up chasing whales around the ocean?" Zara laughed. "My parents were marine biologists. I grew up on research vessels and remote islands. Following in their footsteps was the most natural thing in the world." As they talked, the distance between them gradually closed until their shoulders were nearly touching. The night air had grown cooler, and when Zara shivered slightly, Eve instinctively put his arm around her. She didn't pull away. "I should go," she said eventually, though she made no move to leave. "Or you could stay," Eve suggested, his voice low. She looked up at him, her expression unreadable in the dim light. Then she leaned forward and kissed him, a gentle, questioning touch that quickly deepened as Eve pulled her closer. When they broke apart, Zara stepped back slightly. "This is complicated." "It doesn't have to be," Eve said, though he knew it wasn't true. Everything about her was different from his usual carefully controlled life. "I'm leaving for Antarctica in 3 weeks," she said. "Research grant, 4 months minimum." "Antarctica?" Eve blinked, surprised. Exactly, complicated, she sighed. I should go. This time she meant it. Eve walked her to the elevator, feeling an unexpected sense of loss as the doors closed between them. The next morning, Eve called his sister. What exactly were you thinking, Olivia? Good morning to you too, brother dear, she replied cheerfully. I take it things are going well with Zara. She's leaving for Antarctica in 3 weeks. Olivia's laugh tinkled through the phone. Of course she is. That's Zara for you, brilliant, passionate, and always on the move. You could have mentioned this before setting us up, he said, irritation edging his voice. Would you have agreed to meet her if I had? No, he admitted. Exactly. So what are you going to do about it? Do nothing. It was a couple of pleasant evenings, that's all. MMHMM, Olivia hummed, clearly unconvinced. That's why you're calling me at 7 in the morning, sounding completely flustered. Eve ignored her comment. How do you know her anyway? She's overseeing the marine conservation program our foundation is funding, Olivia explained. We became friends during the planning phase. When I mentioned my impossible brother, she actually seemed interested rather than terrified. Wonderful, you gossiped about me. I presented you accurately. She still wanted to meet you, that should tell you something. After hanging up, Eve tried to focus on work but found himself distracted by thoughts of Zara. By mid-afternoon, he'd made a decision. He picked up his phone and called her. I'm having dinner with some business associates tomorrow night, he said when she answered. They're involved in sustainable shipping initiatives in the Pacific. I thought you might find it interesting. There was a brief pause before Zara replied. Are you asking me on a business dinner or a date? Both, he admitted. Is that a problem? I don't know yet, she said honestly. But I'll come and find out. The dinner was at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the harbor. Eve introduced Zara to his associates, a Norwegian shipping executive, and an environmental compliance officer from Singapore, who were immediately drawn into conversation with her about marine protection zones. Your girlfriend is extremely knowledgeable, the Norwegian commented to Eve during a brief moment when Zara was engaged with the other guest. She's not my girlfriend, Eve corrected automatically, then paused. It's new. The Norwegian nodded knowingly. The good ones are worth pursuing. As the evening progressed, Eve found himself watching Zara interact with his colleagues, impressed by her ability to be both passionate about conservation and practical about implementation. She challenged them without alienating them, suggested compromises that maintained environmental integrity while acknowledging business realities. Later, as they walked along the harbor after dinner, Zara surprised him by taking his hand. That was interesting, she said. I didn't expect your shipping friends to be so receptive to conservation ideas. They might not have been from someone else, Eve replied. You have a way of making people listen. She stopped walking and turned to face him. What are we doing, Eve, right now, walking by the harbor? You know what I mean. I'm leaving soon. You run a global corporation that keeps you working 18-hour days. This doesn't make sense. Eve considered her words. Very few worthwhile things in my life have made sense at the beginning. That's not an answer, I know, he sighed. The truth is, I don't know what we're doing. I just know I want to see you again, and again after that. Antarctica complicates things, but it doesn't have to end them before they begin. Zara studied his face in the soft light from the harbor lamps. I don't do casual very well. Neither do I. A smile slowly spread across her face. So we're both jumping into complicated with our eyes open. It appears so, Eve agreed, pulling her closer. At least we're being logical about our illogical decision. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of dinners, late-night conversations, and stolen moments between Zara's expedition preparations and Eva's business commitments. They discovered shared interests in classical music, a mutual dislike of social media, and a common love for spicy food that had them competing over who could handle the hottest dishes at a Thai restaurant. They also discovered differences. Zara was impulsive, making decisions quickly based on intuition. Eve was methodical, analyzing every angle before committing. She thrived in nature, he preferred urban environments. She slept deeply, he was a chronic insomniac. As Zara's departure date approached, A tension grew between them, unspoken but palpable. Neither wanted to address the looming separation, as if ignoring it might somehow make it less real. 3 days before she was set to leave, Eve invited Zara to his penthouse for dinner. When she arrived, she found the dining room transformed with candles and flowers, a level of romantic effort that momentarily stunned her. "What's all this?" she asked as he took her coat. "I wanted our last dinner before your trip to be memorable," he said simply. Zara's expression softened. "That's surprisingly romantic of you." "I contain multitudes," Eve replied with a hint of humor, leading her to the table. The meal was exquisite, a showcase of Eva's hidden culinary talents. As they finished their dessert, he reached across the table and took her hand. "I've been thinking about Antarctica," he said carefully. And I'd like to visit you while you're there." Zara blinked in surprise. "Visit me in Antarctica? Is that so shocking? I own ships, remember? Getting to Antarctica isn't particularly challenging for me." "It's not about the logistics," Zara said, squeezing his hand. "It's just, most men I've dated couldn't handle my travel schedule. They certainly never offered to follow me to remote research stations." "I'm not most men," Eve said simply, "and what we have, it's worth pursuing, even across continents." Zara stood up and walked around the table, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. "Yes, it is," she agreed, before kissing him deeply. That night, for the first time, she stayed until morning. The day of Zara's departure arrived too quickly. Eve insisted on driving her to the airport himself, rather than sending his usual driver. They sat in unusual silence during the ride, both aware of the weight of the moment. At the terminal, Zara turned to him. 4 months is a long time." "Not in the grand scheme of things," Eve replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "We'll have satellite communication, but it's limited and unreliable. We'll manage." Zara studied his face as if memorizing it. "This is crazy, you know, we barely know each other." "I know enough," Eve said firmly. "I know you're brilliant and passionate and challenging. I know you make me see the world differently. I know that when I'm with you, I'm more present than I've been in years." Her eyes widened slightly. "Eve." "I'm not saying anything more than that," he assured her quickly. "Just that this us is worth the wait and the effort." Zara's departure gate was announced over the speakers. She stood on tiptoe and kissed him, a kiss that held promise and longing in equal measure. "I'll see you in Antarctica," she whispered against his lips. "Count on it." As Eve watched her walk through security, his phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Did she leave yet?" he typed back. "Just went through security." "Are you okay?" Eve considered the question. Was he okay? His chest ached with a strange mixture of anticipation and loss. But underneath, that was something solid, something certain. "Yes," he replied. "I'm booking a trip to Antarctica in 6 weeks." "I knew it," came Olivia's immediate response, followed by a string of celebration emojis. Eve smiled, tucking his phone away as he watched Zara's figure disappear down the concourse. His sister had forced him into a blind date, expecting him to be polite but disinterested, as he always was. She never expected him to want a second date. She certainly never expected him to fall in love. 6 weeks later, Eve stood on the deck of a research vessel approaching the Antarctic coast, the wind biting at his face despite his heavy parka. In the distance, he could see the research station where Zara had been working, a cluster of buildings against the vast white landscape. As the ship docked at the small pier, he spotted her waiting, bundled against the cold, her face lighting up when she saw him. He disembarked quickly, crossing the distance between them in long strides. When he reached her, words seemed inadequate. Instead, he pulled her into his arms, the certainty he'd felt growing stronger with every passing day crystallizing in that moment. "I love you," he said against her hair, surprising himself with the declaration. Zara pulled back slightly, her eyes searching his face. Then she smiled, a brilliant, warm smile that melted the Antarctic chill around them. "I love you too," she replied. "Even if you are a billionaire workaholic with control issues." Eve laughed, feeling freer than he had in years. "And I love you, even if you drag me to the literal end of the earth." "Just wait until I tell you about my next research location," she teased, linking her arm through his as they walked toward the station. Wherever it is, I'll be there, Eve promised, and meant it with every fiber of his being. As they entered the warmth of the research station, greeted by curious scientists and the smell of strong coffee, Eve silently thanked his meddling sister for the blind date he'd tried so hard to avoid. Sometimes, he realized, the best things in life were the ones you never saw coming.